You're listening to Inflow and On Fire, your weekly podcast companion for finding your flow and stoking your inner fire. I'm your host, Quinn Curtis, artist, mother of 5, and aspiring children's book author illustrator. Every month, our soulful discussions spark from a relevant fairy tale or myth. These help us better understand how to navigate our inner worlds and everyday lives so that we can live more joyfully, bring those big and beautiful dreams to life, and make the world a better place. Want to get the most out of this episode? Well, be sure to snag the free gorgeous study guide in the show notes that includes a written copy of the fairy tale or myth, soulful journaling questions, and other additional juicy resources. This episode is for you if you could use an inspiring story of an incredible high school teacher showing up daily and making a difference, a little good news for you, as well as if you could use some inspiration on how to find and follow what's just right for yourself and each other. And if you'd like to hear ways to inspire and support teens to navigate the complexities of life right now, especially talking about the pressures kids are feeling and how to show up as safe spaces. Today's special guest is Amber Tuckness, a woman I have come to deeply respect and fiercely love over the past 4 years as she's made such an incredible impact on my son's life. Since he just graduated high school earlier this year and is off pursuing a music degree in college with much continued encouragement from Amber, I felt it was the right moment now to share this incredible human with all of you. Amber is the director of instrumental music for Cottonwood High School in Utah. She has been teaching for 28 years, and you can find her on Instagram at @C_wood, WOOD music. Also know that as she's speaking and she's talking about all these beautiful feel-good ways to teach, understand that her music department is typically the very best in the state, and her orchestra and band students typically win best in state every year and or frequently. So her methods really, really work and change kids' lives every single year in her programs. Also know that this episode is part of our Goldilocks and the Three Bears fairy tale series, where we're diving deep into issues of the power of choice and finding out what's just right for us. Be sure to stay to the end, where I'll be sharing this week's Inflow and On Fire Bright idea, which will help you integrate all this goodness into your everyday life. Amber, thank you so much for making the time to join me today on this episode. It is such a joy to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Man, I have to tell everybody who's listening, Amber is truly such an inspiring person in my world. She'll probably blush and not want me to share any of this because that is just the type of person that she is. But I love this woman dearly, and I'm excited to share her with you. She has been one of the top 3 people that have made an incredible impact on my son's life in particular, and inspired all the rest of my kids along the way as well. And I will forever be grateful for the heart and soul and love that you put into the work that you do. So as you've heard from Amber's introduction, she is an incredible teacher at our local high school and has been teaching for 28 years now, which is absolutely incredible. And she honestly just lives every day in my experience of her as somebody who is really in tune with what is just right for her, what's really aligned for her, and in showing up each day to give that space to other people as well. So just in the theme of Goldilocks, I would love to hear just your initial impressions of the story. I just always think that's a little bit interesting, but what came up for you with Goldilocks, or thinking about that story from when you heard it?
It was one of my favorites actually as a kid.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a great perspective of just life. You get kids that or people that are extremely picky and finicky, and ones that just want it just the right way, and you have to adapt, you have to adjust. Too hot, too cold, too just right, just hard, and I feel like, especially in my own house, we have to adapt. Everyone wants it their own way, in their own system, and we just all have to adapt and appreciate what is given to us, really, and just adapt. So I've always liked Goldilocks a lot. I think it's a cool story. So
I love what you're bringing up. It's like this permission to let everybody have what's just right for them,
Yeah,
instead of just like a one size fits all. Everybody should like it this one way.
absolutely. And in education, that is so, so, so true. I mean, I can teach one class and you have to teach it so many different levels or different ways, or break it down, or you've got your advanced students, your low end students, your kids that speak no English. So you've got to break it down in so many different ways and make it just right for everybody. Yeah.
Which is pretty complex for the average teacher. For a music teacher who has like significantly more amount of students than an average teacher at the school, like that's got to be pretty overwhelming at times to try to
It
figure
is.
out.
It is, but luckily I have great kids that can help those other learners and assist. I love that we have, ninth through 12th grade. So some of our elder students can help our younger students, or I might have a Spanish speaker that can help the ESL student. And it's really nice. It's a good team effort. It's not just on me, which I love. So there's buy-in from everybody.
That's huge. It also feels like that's probably not something you figured out day one of teaching, and it took time to develop the systems and processes.
Yep, absolutely.
To make that happen.
And the dynamics have changed to our school. I mean, it was a very, very Caucasian school. It's totally changed and moved over. We have 56 languages spoken here at Cottonwood, and it's just the kids are from all over. Some that are literally just came from their countries in terror and war, and they're just happy to be here. They're just so excited to be here, but they don't speak the dominant language here. And so it's changed a lot over the 28 years that I've been here. So you adapt over time and use the resources you have.
Yeah.
So,
well, I would love to back up a little bit and just even hear more about your journey to get to here. And just, did you always know that you wanted to pursue this kind of a path, or how did you get into this? How did you find your just right?
So I've always been a musician. My aunt is the first female horn player, first female brass player in the Utah Symphony. She was a French horn player.
Wow.
And so she kind of led the path for me. And so I just really attached to music from junior high and high school. And then I received a full tuition scholarship up to the University of Utah in music education, because I don't know how I knew this. I still always want to go back and think, how did I make this decision? But I didn't want to just do a performance degree for the sheer fact that when I graduated, I wouldn't have anything else to sell me for a job, or prepare me for a job. So I did more. I figured at least if I had a music education degree, I could use that as I want, because my main goal was always to just be a professional musician and to do, I guess my dream has always been to do soundtracks and be in the studios laying down movie soundtracks. So, so I prepared as a musician in college, alongside, like, I was being a music performance major. So I did higher lessons and I did all of the ensembles, but on the side, I also got my education degree. So I was able to luckily do it in 4 years. I only had a 4 year full tuition scholarship, so I wanted to get it done. And did it in 4 years, had about 22 credit hours a quarter. Wow. And luckily I had parents that supported me, and I got to live at home, and I didn't have to do a lot of working. And I did that, and I graduated. My best friend, Nicole McDermott, shout out to her, Smith at the time, she, we went through the program together. She went on a mission right after that, and I was just like, what do I do now? I had no idea. I didn't really search out for jobs. So I still wonder, I'd love to go back in my mind at that time to think, what was my plan? Because I really don't know what my plan was. It was probably one of the lowest moments of my life, because I just didn't know what to do. I loved college. I loved going. I graduated. My best friend just left. So at that point, luckily in the fall, or right before, about now in August, Clint Frome, who was the teacher here at Cottonwood High School, he knew me through other, interactions and performances. He called me and said, I know you just graduated from the U. Do you have a job yet? And I was like, no, because I had no plans to have a job. And he said, I'm going to be gone for a year. I have a year sabbatical. I'm going to go to the district office and try that job and see if I like it. And I was like, okay. And he said, would you like to take this job for a year? And I was like, well, I got nothing else to do. And so, it's just kismet. It just landed in my lap. And so I got it for a year, loved it from day one. I mean, there's moments. I mean, I was only 4 years older than some of my students.
Wow.
Because I was 22 at the time, and my students were, some of them were 18.
Mm.
And so I started at 22. I did it for the year, loved it. Clint Fromm decided to stay at the district. And so then I had to reapply for the job. And it was me against Mr. Thompson, who is a veteran teacher, taught at Granite High School. And luckily, my principal believed in me enough to just say, you've already been here a year, you enjoyed it, let's keep you here. So
Wow.
that was it. I just landed the job here. I've been so lucky to be at this wonderful high school for 28 years. I've been offered many jobs in different districts and areas, and I just couldn't move. It's just, this is where I'll end up. So, and leave and retire. So it was never the plan to be an educator, but so it's kind of, I don't know, just happened.
Yeah. Well, and I love that about the Goldilocks myth of that there's just experimentation that happens. Like it's hard to just know in our heads what's right. And so often when we're trying to just follow what our heads are saying is just right, it's often like a pre-prescribed path or what we think other people would want us to do.
Exactly.
Instead of giving ourselves that time to experiment and try.
I'm an only child. I don't know if you know that. So I didn't have a lot of guidance or, other than my aunt. And when I found out about my aunt more and more and just was around the musician world, they just didn't like their job. And that made me so sad. That it killed me. Like, it's such stressful and fast paced and know who you know. And just, it's a very intense job. And so the more I saw musicians and they just didn't like their job, they didn't enjoy it, all that hard work, I just thought, why am I putting myself in a spot? So I still play professionally as much as I can and balance it out with my school and home life. But, yeah, it was just not the path I was thinking about. My parents, neither have graduated from college. My mom was about halfway through medical school. Just never got supported by his family, and unfortunately did not do any college work. He started in college both at the U, but so I'm the graduate of our family. And so I don't know. I didn't have a lot of guidance in that area, and I just kind of found the path myself. So luckily.
It's massive. I'm also curious too, I would imagine it requires like a recommitment regularly to kind of stay on this path, or at least that's been the way it's been with some of my passions. Is it's like I love art, I love illustration and making picture books and things, but there are moments when it's really hard and trying and I don't really want to. So it's like kind of the recommitting or staying in the practice of it or remembering the why I'm doing it can be really powerful anchors to keep going. So I'm curious about just what that's been like for you over the years with, I mean, arguably, I think every listener would agree that all teachers just get straight tickets into heaven. Like it's not the easiest job on the planet, you know? And so you're just like excited to hear, how do you stay engaged? How do you keep your heart in it? What supports you with that?
So there happened to be a gentleman down the hallway, that was the drama teacher, and that was soon to be my husband. Met here at Cottonwood.
Love story, by the way.
It is really pretty cute. So he was just down the hallway. I didn't date a lot in college. I was too busy. I was going to college. So I met him, and he was a drama teacher, and he was here till, 9 or 10 o'clock every night. And we were both very, very busy. And so when he retired, year 10 of our marriage and togetherness, I announced that I was gone. I was done. I was going to go with him. I announced it to the kids. I announced it to my admin, everything, because I was just like, I don't know how to do this and keep up till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. And then I looked back and went, what am I going to do? I still have to, have a living. So, I looked at a couple of other options. And then by the time the end of the year hit, I was just like, I really have it pretty good here. And I just need to rethink the way I'm doing it. And my first 10 years, I would say, was a lot more intense. I was a lot more strict, a lot more demanding of the kids. And I just realized that my kids are not the same as me, a high school kid. My drive was, being a professional musician. And in 28 years, I only have a handful of kids that are doing it professionally. And because it's so hard to get, a professional gig. And so I just felt like if I see it through different lenses, I can step back a little bit, make more time for my family. I had a young family at the time. Then I would try it. And having my husband retire made it very doable. I was able to come home at 4 or 5 instead of 9 or 10. And he stepped up. Not that he wasn't before, he was just so busy. So he helped with raising the kids too. And it was just a hump. I mean, I've always said I was strong. And I hit that 10-year mark and I was just like, I don't know if I can keep this up. And now I'm, back down. And I think you just go through those ebb and flows of like, can I do this? At this point at 28, I'm like, I don't have a choice. I've got to get it through to the end. I want to make sure I walk on that stage with my son at Cottonwood High School when he graduates in 6 years. So at least there's some goals at the end that keep me here. And then just perspective. Like if you can balance out your life a little bit between school and home and your own personal growth and health, I think that's important. So, there's been a lot of back and forth. Should I go to another school? I mean, grass is greener always on the other side. I've offered many, many jobs and even district jobs where it has nothing to do with teaching students. And I can't see myself do it. This is my home. This is where I belong. So I mean, things change. My husband's back into teaching. He retired. He teaches at Granger High School. He teaches 3 day or every other day debate. And so he's still involved. This is his 50th year of teaching. So it's in our blood. It's, our kids now. My daughter is up at the U in education as well for theater education. And her wife is in music education like me. So I guess it's going to go. It's like my husband and I reincarnated. So it's kind of cool. So so it's definitely hard. But the kids are what keep me here. The rules change. The legislation changes. The hoops that you have to jump through to travel, to do concerts, to do anything. But when you look at those kids in their eyes and their enjoyment, it's how can you not do that for them?
Yeah.
How can you not?
I would imagine. I just thinking about maybe just slight off track, but just the power that you see the arts programs having in students' lives, especially right now. I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts on that as well, as far as them finding what's just right for themselves as well in the life,
for sure.
in the world.
This is home for a lot of kids. This is why some kids come to school. We have our charter school within our school here at Cottonwood with Ames. And a lot of those Ames kids are here because they know they can do the art program and they're strong art programs, whether visual, dance, acting, singing, music. But in that niche, and even if they don't want to be, I've got kids that graduate from high school and will never play their instrument again, but they can say they were part of something big in high school. They can have those memories of travel and concerts and funny things that happen in rehearsal or the musicals or whatever. And I guess that's what keeps me going, really. If I can affect one kid a year, that's enough for me. Luckily, I average a little more than that, but I really want to make sure. I really want to make sure that I, at least connect with one kid.
It's huge. I think part of why I was so excited to hear your story and have you share more is like there's something you have figured out that like I wish could inspire so many teachers who it is so hard right now, and just parents in general. Like feels like the stakes are just feeling higher than ever. Like I'm watching as my kids have like just graduated, my oldest, and then I've got 2 more coming down the pike. And it is amazing how that, okay, cool. Well, you had your childhood, time to move on, time to like get real serious. And the stakes are now incredibly high, how fast that hits. And I know you've just lived this as well with your daughter moving into college and then graduating. Then you see it every year with the kids graduating. And I was just curious if you've noticed, is that how it's always kind of felt with the kids? Like there's always been that intensity, or does it feel a little higher right now?
It does feel more high, but I hear less talk about going to college and studying, and it's more about, and I don't get me wrong, I have all the respect in the world for people that go through trade schools and, learn to become, we need those plumbers and doctors, both, but, kids, they all think they can be YouTube sensations or, and it's just unbelievable that the perspective of these kids is so warped. by social media. So I agree. The pressure is on more from their own families, and I think from society. And yeah, kids are growing up faster than they should, unfortunately. I know I grew up really fast being an only child. I think that was hard. And Abby did too, because she was only child for 8 years. And even Ty, I just see it happens overnight. I look at him like, you're not a young boy anymore. You're a man. And the pressure, like he's already thinking about college and what he wants to do with his life. And it's like, you're in 7th grade. Why are you even thinking about this?
Be a kid
I know I
bit.
wasn't. I was just like, who am I going to play with tonight after school? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. The social side is a lot different too. I've been talking to my girls about that. Like in college, there's just no socialization. It's just all focused on studies and getting stuff done and working. And like, it's just different than when I grew up, at least.
Yeah, it's kind of a theme that I've been feeling into with Goldilocks. It seems like there's this very externalized version of what happiness and success looks like. But then what I love about Goldilocks, and to the themes you were pointing to in the beginning as well, is just like her ability to prioritize and find what is just right for her, even at the expense of potentially hurting somebody else, or like these are scary themes that I think we all face of like, well, if I do what's right for me, like maybe that's going to disappoint my family, or it's going to make it harder on them, or like there's so many forces, so many more forces it feels, to keep us doing what's expected or what is right versus what is just right for us.
For too, that the expectations are very high in Utah. Like, just how you live your life as a family and as a mom and as a wife. And I feel that sometimes for sure. But, you're right. Like when I made that decision after that 10 years, I had to decide, how is this going to affect my family? How is this going to affect me as a professional and my students and Cottonwood High School? And yeah, there's a lot on the line for one decision.
Yeah. And to follow what's just right. It's so intense.
Exactly.
So I'm curious too, like to put the stakes even higher in your world. I've been so impressed. You have two incredible children who are they both identify on the queer spectrum. And like that's another element of like finding what's just right for you, and the stakes being high and the intensity there. So I'm curious about how you've navigated that, or just your feelings about that in general, how to do that.
We weren't expecting my daughter Abrielle to be queer. Not expecting, but like we didn't see the signs as much as my sweet boy. I mean, kids were asking me when he was age 4 and 5, is he gay? I'm like, I don't know, he's 4 or 5. So yeah, I mean, he's just a different breed. I love him to death. And Abby, she was into sports, but she was also, she dated boys and stuff in high school. So when she came to us, it was definitely not. It was a shock, and not a bad shock, not a negative shock. If you don't, and I think but for the audience, my husband's quite a bit older than me by a lot, and that was always a worry because the older generation don't accept it as much. But luckily, he is an artist. He is a drama teacher. He's been around this his whole life, and I mean, he's always been very accepting and very, very passionate about support for them. And I mean, it's a fine line, you don't want your kid to get made fun of, but you also want them to express themselves. Yeah. So I don't know if my son will ever hear this, but every night he talks about, what should I wear to school tomorrow? And it's like, what do you feel comfortable wearing? Wow. And sometimes it's too much, and sometimes being himself, but he has to adapt. But he also has to be aware that people are going to make fun of him. Yesterday, he got called gay in class, and he went to the teacher respectfully and said, can you please sit me somewhere else? They're making inappropriate comments. So he's had to fight since elementary school. Abby didn't. Abby, because she didn't come out until she was a senior in high school, she didn't really have to deal with that as much. But I mean, she is now, obviously. She definitely has the look and characteristics of a lesbian, so she's always questioned and stuff like that. But it hasn't changed our world at all. My husband says it really well, that you would never wish that upon your child, to be different than others, but we will never shun it. We will never get rid of them in our lives and our family. We're always going to support them, but you never want your child to be already at a disadvantage. And they are in this climate, in this state, in this political game we're in right now. My kids are scared. My girls are very scared. They're married women. And if something political happens in the near future, we've had to talk about moving out of country just to protect them and their lives. So it's hard. It's hard because it's not a lifestyle you want for them, but we are very supportive of it. We love and embrace them. My son made this a couple years ago, and just it's okay to be different. It's okay to like pink. It's okay to like ballet. You don't have to like blue. You don't have to like superheroes. And I totally, I mean, right there just says it all to me that he embraces that he can be who he wants to be. And same with my daughter. And I hope that I've helped those others that are in my classes to feel supported, feel loved and wanted here too. You know, we have all this here, and I'm sure someday I'll get in trouble for having it up, which is sad, but it just says that we're open to anything. We're open for you to believe what you want to believe, and everybody needs support. So
it just hits on some of the bigger themes of just the fear around, just why we have so much fear around choosing what's just right for us, why it's so scary even to experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids, we've talked about this because like in even 4th, 5th grade, there was just like, we got to take an online test to see if we're on the queer spectrum, and like online test. Like, what world do we live in where we're reaching for online quizzes to figure out who we are? But like this is kind of the world that they're living in, where they're trying to see. And the big thing I just have felt so strongly as they're all walking through their paths as well is just, you know, trying to not get boxed into any one identity until you're really, really sure. And even as a 40-year-old adult, I don't feel really, really sure of my identity yet either. So I think like part of this is just finding your just right. It's like a lifetime process. It's not just like you figured it out and you live happily ever after.
For sure. But it's true. We all have a path, and we all have, but hopefully all I care is these kids have support somewhere. You know, my own kids, other kids.
Yeah. Well, something that really struck me in the Goldilocks story as I was reading as a kid, I was very concerned. What is Goldilocks doing out in the middle of nowhere, feeling like she had no place to go, but she has to break into this house and eat these bears' porridge and sleep in their bed? Like, in my mind, she was some poor runaway, you know? And so I was always alarmed at how the bears treated her. Why didn't they ask questions? Why weren't they like trying to like make sure she was okay? She's this little kid. They're sending her back into the woods, you know?
Yeah, and that's the point.
So I was just curious to you of like just the ways that you've learned to kind of create a safe space, especially in environments like you can't control what all of the other teenagers are doing in your classrooms per se. But like, how do you feel as an adult that you can kind of set the standard or set, you know, really help create a safe space? Because I do think you are such a leader in that way.
You know, just we support. I'm your home away from home. You're my home away from home. Let's work here together. Some of you I will know for 4 years and beyond. Some I'll only know you for half a year. And I think it's just all about your demeanor and your positivity. I try little funny, you know, studies in the hall, like I just did it now. Like these kids aren't used to people smiling at them. Like, and I don't know. I always try and predict in my head: are they going to smile back? Or are they not going to smile? And you know, I want to be that safe spot for any kid here and feel comfortable. So I think again, it's just all. If I walk through the hall mad or I don't have perfect days. Sometimes I'm sad or I'm mad, and I can feel that from my own students. They're like, you know, oh, she's upset today, or like test the water, right? Or they're like, oh, she's sad. And I think it's all about how you perceive yourself and how you with the kids. Like they will challenges, and not as much as like elementary school, but still, like if I come in a raw mood, I can tell my kids will be too. And same thing, I can read off of them. I meet my kids at the door every day, and and say hi to each one of them separately, and I can see, oh, it's not a good day for them, you know. And then I know I need to give them a little more support, or in rehearsal, just let them be. Don't address them today. And so there's just not that human connection as much anymore, and these kids need that. They're too busy on cell phones. They're too busy. So it'll be interesting this year. We have this new cell phone policy. It'll be interesting to see if that helps. I've already noticed more eyeballs and more connection in class, so that's been really cool to see. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I had that realization like a year or so ago with some of my kids' friends, the teenagers coming, where I would just like look in their eyes as I was talking to them. And there was almost like this like moment where I could see it was like, oh wait, I haven't looked anyone in the eyes today, almost of a feeling. And then they'd lock in and feel like seen for a minute. I remember one of my daughter's friends coming, and it was right before one of the school dances, and I just looked her in the eyes and said, you just are so beautiful. And like tears came immediately. She looked like a kid who just felt like she always knew she was beautiful, but to be seen in that way and to actually feel it, I could tell hit different. And it's really opened my eyes to how the teens of today they aren't getting eye contact. They aren't getting connection, like you're saying. It's a different world for them.
It is. Stop. What is going on? I mean, these are my best kids. I'm like, what's going on? Why are you guys so raw? And why are you guys so emotional? And they just said, and this is, a year after COVID, and they're like, we just don't feel like we're worth anything. We don't feel seen. We don't feel like anybody cares. We don't feel like, and they said, not you, Amber, not you, but just like, no one cares about us in the hallway. No one cares if we're going to graduate. No one cares where we're going to go to school. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's what these kids feel after COVID. They just felt like it didn't matter. Nothing was going to make them positive anymore. It was hard to hear that. But it was nice for them to be vulnerable to tell me, because I couldn't figure it out. We were having some issues in our bathroom, just people sloughing and being ornery, and I said, what can I do instead of going there and ranting and raving? Yeah. What can I do? And they're like, just smile and say, are you okay? Do you need anything? And I've tried that the last couple of years, and it's made a huge difference. Because kids, even if I know they're doing graffiti in my bathroom, like I can at least say, hey guys, is everything okay? And be more on their level, versus they just feel like they're just, like you were saying, those expectations are so high right now that they'll never meet their highest, abilities and capabilities. And that's just so sad. And these are some of my best, highest grade students. So you can imagine what the lower end kids, or the kids that don't have support at home, or they go home, or the latchkey kids, or they're the Goldilocks roaming around the woods going, I don't know where I am. And so we've made some changes at schools, like homeroom this year and last year, where it was fun to see my homeroom kids, because these are kids I would never, ever meet in my other classes. And they smiled when they came in after the summer, and they're like, hey, Amber, how's it going? I was like, oh my gosh, we have made a connection. And I love that about that. So it's possible, but it's just hard. These kids just don't feel seen, and they don't feel supported or cared about. And that's devastating to me. Yeah. I didn't feel that way. I did not feel that way in high school or junior high.
No, same. I mean, like maybe a little teenage angsty, right? And
sure.
But outside of that, nothing like the loneliness, the despair that I sense in my kids who have tools and resources and people that do try to look in their eyes every day. And I think like how difficult it is for our family to try to do that. I'm sure you guys, it's difficult as well with how much you got going on. Like the struggle is real, and it feels like most families are struggling to try to get in enough connection to try to actually connect in meaningful ways.
Kids go anywhere with me and do anything when they were younger, and now it's like, oh, do we have to? And I'm like, yep. Like, you're gonna love it. Like, I promise. And it's hard. It's harder now, yeah. But then when we don't do something, we're like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
When are we going to do it? I was like, oh, so you do like it.
Yeah. Oh, I see you.
Yeah, I see you. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many kids have told me that, like, I wish you were my mom, or I wish you would, I wish my family did the things your family does. And it just breaks my heart. So we try and do those things, some of those things here at school. But I mean, I heard that the other day, like, this horrible statistic I wish I had it memorized of kids that have never had a book in their house and or a book read to them as a kid. And that shocked me.
Oh, no.
Like, that's not even, I can't. So I read books to my kids a lot here and there. My own kids, but also my students. And it's like, they love it. I'm like, well, it's like we go back to elementary school. They love it. They eat it up because they just haven't had that. All of them haven't had that when they were a kid.
I do the same. I've got monthly online painting classes that I do, and I always read a children's book at the last 15 minutes to everybody, adults, everybody needs read to all the time.
Oh, I think that's so cool.
Well, this is bringing up so many great points. I just wonder, in kind of bringing it home, just like what advice or insights might you have about creating a life that you love or one that's just right to you? Maybe even thinking of this as like, towards other adults, but then we could also talk about just towards the youth of today and kind of what you hope they would take away.
And say, I don't really care what you do, just love what you do. And I say, how many of you have parents that don't like their job, that complain about it every day? And, 40, 50% of the class raise. How many of you have people that, how many have parents that love their job? Maybe one, maybe two. And I just said, why? I said, money's important. I get it. And I could be making a lot more money doing something else. But I can promise I love my job. And I always say, if there's a point where I say I don't love my job anymore, then I need to get out. It's my time to change. Because then I'm only affecting negatively to my students. So find a passion or find an occupation or have it find you, like it did me, that you love and that most days are more positive than others. Are there days I can't stand this job? Are there days? Absolutely. And it's painful and it's, time consuming. But like I just had a class last period and I don't know these kids, but I don't know. After the class, I was like, that was a good day. That was a good class. No one yelled at me. No one complained. No one rolled their eyes. They seemed engaged. And I was like, I was just teaching them FACE on the board, but it was at least connecting with kids. And so that's what I tell my students is like, find an occupation, not what your parents did, not what your parents are telling you to do, not what your great grandfather has passed down to you in 12, find something that strikes you as a person and that makes you a better person and makes you a positive influence in your community. I think that's so important for adults too. And I mean, I could retire in 3 years. I won't, but I could. And then at 52, what do I do? Or actually in 2 years, what can I do? And I could do lots of things, but will I make as much impact on students and kids and adults than I can in this environment? I mean, it happened with my husband. It's really sad. When he retired here, I realized no one knows him. No one knows this icon of a person, top in the state. Because once you leave, you're gone and no one remembers you. And so I know the minute I retire, no one will know the Amber Tuckness that people know now. But I still changed all those lives during that. I hope to have changed all those lives during that time. And then balance. I think I can't say I'm great at it, but I do try balance, and I try to make myself never bring home work. At least correcting papers and, answering emails. I am accessible to my students 24/7. I think that's really important for them to know that, so like if your son calls me at 10 o'clock at night to ask me a question, I'm going to answer, that's my role as a teacher. Now, not every teacher feels that way, and that's okay. But I can still have balance, and I'll look at my own kids and say, okay, this is work related. I just got to answer this real quick. But I live my life to the fullest. I'm super busy. My dad's constantly saying, you need to slow down. You're doing too much. And I go, in my view, I only have one life right now, and I got to fill it to the most. I've got to have fun, and I've got to make it memorable. And with my husband being older, each day is a treasure that I have to be with him, for my kids to be with him. And that's important. I got to live life to its fullest. So schoolwork, I'm here. I do a lot. And then after hours, every day we're trying to do something. Like, what are we going to go do after school? make it momentous somehow. And some of those times are sitting on my couch with my kids watching a movie. It's okay to take time for yourself, but I do feel that obligation to entertain my husband, entertain my children, because I'm only going to get them for so much time, you know. My daughters will be moving out probably next year, and that'll be weird, you know, to not have them at home, but I'm hoping for kids and all that stuff. But I think at least that time we've had together is momentous and heavily recorded. Everyone has seen it. So there was like, why do you post everything? I'm like, because people need to know you can have a life outside of your job. You know, people need to know you have, like, I love watching your videos and your art, and I just, you know, it just shows that you have a passion for what you do. And kids need to know I don't just come to school and then go home and nothing. You know, celebrate every day.
Yeah, it feels like I just love everything you're sharing, by the way, but I just was feeling into, you know, I used to be a professional marketer. Actually, I mean, still am. I'm probably getting back into that really soon on this side. But like the difference in the first 16 years of my career was that was my identity largely. I got my worth and my value from the job and how great I was at the job and how good the paycheck was even. And it hit me as I got massive adrenal fatigue from hustling there and just really sick from it, missed a lot. Like my youngest daughter's first steps were texted to me because I was working all the time. Like I just missed everything. And how I realized, oh my gosh, I've been so focused building a career. I haven't built a life. And so I love what you're sharing. Like it really is like this building a life. You've built such a beautiful life and are working at it still, of course. Sure. It's a practice, but like, gosh, so inspiring, Amber.
At the time to raise them too. They were here all the time. There's one yearbook. My daughter is in the yearbook more than any other kid. And she was like 5. She was like the school mascot, but they were here after school every day, you know, because it was either that or I let down my own students, but my kids learned a ton being here. They've traveled with us on every tour. So they've seen great places, and, you know, my son could give the tours to all the kids. Like he knows everything. And so they've really grown up fast because of that, but also had so many great experiences. So it was a good way to balance life. And when I've talked to my kids, like, did you like that as a childhood? And they did. You know, they knew that they were busy and that they were expected to be at school a lot, but that's just was life with 2 teachers as parents, you know. But it was better than having them with somebody else, somebody with a family member or a daycare. At least we were still building relationships together. So, yeah.
I love that.
I loved raising my kids here at the school. So
love that. It feels like too, you're speaking to, you know, maybe just in tying it all together in a bow, like finding your just right has involved doing unconventional things.
Yeah.
Right. That's definitely not the conventional way of raising kids or even being a teacher. Right. And so I'm sure you had to like juggle a little bit of that, what's expected, and keep just standing up for this is what's right for our family.
Both have to work. You know, it works for us for sure.
Yeah.
We're not good savers because we just spend all we have at the moment now. And we've always told our kids, you're not going to inherit anything because we've spent it on you, giving you the life you wanted to, giving you the experience you want. Live for the now, I guess, is probably a big quote I have. And I wear a bracelet every day of my life, and it says work hard and play hard. It's right here. And it just reminds me that you can work as hard as you want, but you got to play hard as well. You got to have a good balance of both. So this always reminds me that I've got to do both. Work hard, play hard.
I love that. I was going to note, like, something I've really admired of watching how you teach and work with your students as well is just like, well, and what I see from your family on Instagram too. I see you living this, or I'm like, every school year has a cute, clever theme, and then your classroom is all decked out. And like I saw the planets this year all over your ceiling, right? It's so fun.
You got it.
Yes, and you have like theme days, and like it seems like you've figured out how to really like infuse joy into the everyday, or as best as possible, right? And I'm just so inspired by that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on how or why, or if that's just more of that play hard mentality there. But
even if they're horrible at music, how am I going to keep that kid in this program? And if that's decorating the room or, telling him it's National Joke Day, which it is.
What? I didn't know. That's
I
great.
wish I had a great joke for you, but I don't. But telling him it's National Joke Day and asking the kids, tell me a funny joke or whatever it is, and that's what I tell the kids. They always say, why do you celebrate National Days? Because it's something to celebrate every day. If it's National Avocado Day, I'm going to really appreciate that avocado. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But I think just the buy-in. They go to these other classes and they hear these monotone. We have great teachers here, but I don't know how you enthusiastically teach math all day long or, things like that. And our teachers do a great job, but, just bringing some excitement and enthusiasm as they walk into the classroom. It's a home. A kid told me the other day, and it just made my heart sing. He's like, I go into other band rooms and they're stark and boring and there's nothing on the wall. And if you could see my room right now, there's stuff all over the walls, our awards, things we've done, pictures, and all this great stuff, and things about me and my life. And I just think that's cool to share with kids because I was always told in college that you're supposed to have this big wall between you and your kids. Oh, yeah. And you're never supposed to break through that wall. And I guess that was the first thing I did, is like broke through that wall and said, I've got to be invested with these kids. Because that's what my teachers did for me in school, is they invested in me and I knew who they were and we had a great relationship together. So that's my advice, is just make it welcoming, make it comfortable, make it home for these kids or whatever your job you're in. Yeah.
I love it. So many good juicy nuggets. Thank you for all of the good things you've shared. Just wondering in closing if there's any final thought that you hope people walk away with this conversation, or just anything you'd like to leave in closing.
As adults, they're already feeling in high school. They're worried about politics. They're worried about economy. They're worried about jobs. I've never seen so many kids work after school than I do now. Their worries are so much more heightened than when we were kids, at least from my own childhood. I grew up in a lot of poverty, did not have one parent working, but I never wished for more, honestly. It just is how it was. And these kids, they're comparing each other. They're comparing from social media. They're comparing, it's just so hard. They're wanting to live their best life, but to do that, they're stressing themselves out. So these kids are just strained and stressed, and they want to be kids. They really do, deep down. So when I hand out little vials of bubbles and we go outside and blow bubbles, I think it's the most immature, juvenile thing, but it is their whole day, and they'll talk about it for weeks. Oh. And so you just sorry, that's the alarm to pick up my son. See, this is what you do as a working mom. You have to just balance that out and just have fun and let them be kids and let them just let the stress relief for a minute. But give them a chance. I see so much hope in this next generation. They care about our planet. They care about their self-worth. They care about each other. They just need that guidance a little bit more than we did, I think, as kids. So that's my biggest thing, is don't write these kids off. When you see 100 of us at the symphony, know that they're there to be there, not because their teacher made them. They chose to be there, or if we're out having a good activity or on tour or playing music somewhere, they've chosen to do that. And there's a lot of kids like that, and a lot of kids who don't get these opportunities, and we just need to reach out to those kids and make sure they have those opportunities. I don't get to reach every kid in this school, unfortunately. I wish I did, but if it's me smiling in the hall and then that's reaching them, then that's what I'm going to do. So.
I love that. God, well, thank you so much, Amber. It's just been such a joy to have you on. I'm grateful for the insights that you've shared as well. So I hope everybody got a lot out of it too. I was so impressed by Amber Tuckness before this interview, but after, I am in awe of her. I love her philosophy on life and the heart and soul she brings to her work with teenagers and music. I also loved her play hard, work hard mentality, and left the conversation feeling excited to infuse more playtime into my life, especially with my family. So today's Inflow on Fire Bright idea is to ask yourself, what part of your life would you like to infuse more just right into? And how can you bring more play hard joy into your life? Also, if you are a mother or a parent or work with kids and teenagers of any kind, a good question to also consider given this episode's content is asking how can you be an even safer space for kids, teens, and others in your world to experiment and find what's just right for themselves. If you'd like to think through these bright ideas and more questions to help you break through, be sure to download the free study guide listed in the show notes. In Flow and On Fire is a weekly podcast to help you find your flow and stoke your inner fire so that you can live more joyfully, create those big and beautiful dreams, and make the world a better place. Living in Flow on Fire isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. We make this show every week to help support you in that practice with deep inspirational insights and real-world examples of other soulful people who are leaning into this journey also. To better support your In-Flow On Fire practice, we send you each week's episode via email direct to your inbox so you never miss a beat. Go to quincurtis.com/email to sign up and stay inspired. Also, when you sign up, you'll get access to my free Living in Flow and On Fire guide. A step-by-step path to find your flow and stoke your fire today. Sign up at quincurtis.com/email to amp up your inflow and on fire lifestyle with me now. This has been another episode of Inflow and On Fire, a weekly podcast cheering you on to follow your heart and come more alive. It can be tough to stay in flow and keep your creative fires burning bright, so please take this podcast with you on your journey. Subscribe so we can keep fanning your flames and cheering you on each week. If you got something out of this episode and haven't already left us a review, please do. Positive reviews really help other people who need this to find it also. I'm your host, Quinn Curtis, artist, mother of 5, and aspiring children's book author illustrator. I'm here creating this show because I know just how hard it can be to even just stay excited and engaged in our everyday lives. With so many demands for our time and attention, it can be especially tricky to prioritize those nudges from our heart and soul. However, the costs like depression, disconnection, anxiety, overwhelm, loneliness, lack of fulfillment, and so much more are really high when we don't. So every week I gather soulful stories, inspiring ideas, and incredible people to help us stay connected to our inner compass and remember what's most important. Ultimately, I created this show because I need those regular reminders too, but my hope is it can also inspire and help you to keep going and bring more of your magic that's inside of you out into the world. We need it. Special thanks to Avesa and Maddie Love for our theme music. Thank you so much for listening, friend. In between now and when we connect again, stay in flow on fire. It matters and you matter.